All right, welcome to the build.
Mate, I'm really good. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Been a few minutes.
Let's get set up. All right. Welcome to the much awaited, at least by me, episode 20. We never thought we'd make it, mate.
26.
I was
Quarter
really
of this-
glad that you didn't get picked up by the CCP and put in prison.
Yeah, I know. I had a few close calls. No, that was talking about going to Hong Kong for the holidays, which was awesome. It was a really cool experience, and being with all locals, that certainly helps. Skip all the tourist stuff. Of course, we did do some tourist stuff, but
Yeah,
how was your holiday?
I didn't have much of a holiday. I was working mostly. Deep in the vibe code, coursing with vibes, my friend. Yeah, it was good. I didn't go back to Australia. I was just here, hunkering down in the beautiful Southern California weather. Mate, let's get into it. There's so much to talk about. I need to take a break, an AI break. I've been overwhelmed by agent harness news and energy. I saw an X post that perfectly articulated my last month, which is before AI, I had a real problem where I had like 2 to 3 unfinished side projects on the go at all times. And now that solves, I have like 10 to 20. So that's basically me. I don't know. I need your feedback
to see more. I know you showed me a little bit of what you're talking to here, and it got me sidetracked, of course. But it was one of those things, and I guess you were telling me about this thing, and I felt like it was important enough. I needed to stop and learn a little bit about it, and after taking some time, I fully agree. So I'm excited to learn more about what you've learned this week, because I've got definitely some questions for you.
Well, you should probably defer them to Claude. I don't know. I guess it'll be everything we talk about on the show today will be about this, right? For context, I'm sure not everyone who's listening to this doesn't need that much context. Over the holidays, basically everyone sort of realized with a little bit of a break that the long horizon task kind of frontier has been pushed out pretty dramatically by Opus 4.5. And everyone is investing more in these coding harnesses that step away from an IDE developer experience, right? And moves towards terminal or like multi-agent system kind of coordination harnesses. And my X feed, I don't know about you, but is full of the most hilarious and awesome examples of this. I then spent a weekend building one, which was half-baked. I'm sure you probably found a bunch of problems with it, but it's a super interesting, exploding domain. We talked about it a little bit as a result of some of the work that the LangChain guys had done around this deep agents package. I think a lot of the philosophy is actually kind of baked in from that perspective. Like the more I was reading a post put in the show notes from Harrison and the team about the decision criteria they made around their memory store. And then in addition to that, there's these other open source packages and open source projects that other people have been working on, and bringing those all together into something that enables you to run a coordinated swarm of highly intelligent coding agents that collaborate and don't tread on each other and execute together as a team. And then there's different philosophies, which we'll probably talk about around like how you should get them to work together, whether they should be in work trees, whether they should be on separate branches, whether they should just be in the same repo, just fighting it out. So yeah, I want to spend as much time as possible talking about this today. But before we jump into that, and they've got a few demos. I've also got a demo of this thing called Node Banana from a guy called, I think his Twitter handle is just Wille. And I spoke to him. He's a indie developer from New Zealand. I spoke to him this week, and he's one of those like delightful, like just open source dev kind of community people where I actually want to talk to him about this project in the creative space. It turns out he's an absolute expert in Gaussian splatting and like 3D rendering and a whole bunch of other things. So he's super interesting. I want to pull that package up and give it a demo as well. Before we do that, do we want to hit any like things in the news or stuff that caught your eye that we should chat about before we jump into the expansive demos?
There's been so much while we were away. I think the biggest thing that I keep thinking about, I don't know, the Grok NVIDIA acquisition. There's been some big waves in the like the VC space, but that's like weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's worth touching on that. So the Grok one was interesting, right? I called you and talked to you about it. Man, if we like the builds VC portfolio would be exploding right now. It would be absolutely ripping. Because Grok, obviously, like fast inference, open source models being with this common pattern now where there's this reverse kind of acquisition via a IP licensing plus a team buy. completely screw the people who work for the original company, but great for the founders, obviously. Maybe, I don't know
Tom,
the
you know what we
specifics of
should
this
do?
deal. Like when it happened on the windsurf front, obviously it wasn't amazing. That like makes perfect sense to me, right? And it's made me so much more bullish on the frontier price of NVIDIA in the next 24 months. Like they can really harness the TPU inspired architecture of those LPUs and then smash that inference kind of frontier, because it's relevant for what I was doing in the context of what developers are now going to do with these harnesses. As soon as I got it working and I was like, I need to swarm a bunch of coding agents, the first thing I looked for was high throughput token provider. And I went straight to Cerebras, right? And Cerebras, in response, just signed that licensing deal with OpenAI, right? Those guys were thinking about doing an IPO this year, well, last year. Like they were playing with it. I wish they had have, but as now that I've gotten into actually using Cerebras for real, that platform is incredible. I know you've used it before. I hit my my throughput limit, my like rate limit, like within a heartbeat. And all of their packages and the dev packages that they have are all now sold out because did you see they put GLM 4.7 on there?
Yeah, you were the one that told me about that, and I'd been using it through Olama Cloud, but I also do use Cerebros on occasion. But I don't know. I was looking at their packages, and I re-upped my credits on just like pay for use, and I have not been hitting the rate limits. So I know the other packages, they include like Quinn Coder or Quinn 3 Coder and some other models that they
Yeah,
don't have
there's
available.
so well, I want to buy the developer package. So I was just using the API, right? But the API, they're not selling the developer package now. There's like they've paused sales of it, which is like that says something. Like, can you remember a time when like I don't know, like a Amazon ever said, we're not selling you S3 buckets right now. Demand is too high and we can't spin up enough S3 buckets. Like that's never happened in the history of like cloud computing, right? These guys are like, sorry, I can't sell you this plan. You can pay per use. The reason why I was hitting the limits actually is because I hadn't misconfigured. So I was using it for a work project and I'd misconfigured the caching because the caching works slightly differently on Cerebras. I don't know if you've run into that problem. You have to structure your prompts slightly differently. So I was hitting the token limit pretty quickly. And then I fixed that and actually it's like great. So the token limit per minute is I don't know, it's just like a couple of million. But now I'm hitting the multiple request
Daily, hourly limits.
Well, there's a per minute, per hour, and per day limit, right? I think the per minute one is 250 requests, something like that. And then I started hitting that pretty quickly as well.
Yeah. Well, Tom, on that, I mean, so the long horizon agent runs has been kind of the focus for the last few months of where we're going, and I've been doing a lot of work on that front. And there are, like you mentioned, the timeouts and rate limits on the inference. Like that's really the challenge. Is every step along the way. We've talked about how it's a very fragmented ecosystem. Whether you're talking about storage, compute, inference, whatever it is, there's like 100 different entry points, like where your data is going. And so we've talked about tracing and logging, making sure that you have visibility and observability. And that becomes extremely important when you're talking about the long horizon runs, because if you can't figure out where is it dropping, it might have been a timeout on the inference. Oh, it might have been a timeout on if you're using containers, so things just got quite a bit more complex on that front. And it's just, something that I've been running into and having to be very mindful of. And every single provider, like you said, they do things differently. So that's where if you want to have like multi-provider setups, it can be a lot of work to nail it in for every single one of them.
What do you use for that? Do you use Langsmith?
Langsmith, and then I've started using Sentry a little bit more. You've heard of Sentry? They have
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have some direct integrations. Langsmith is going to be more on the tracing your LLM traffic. And then Sentry, sometimes I'll use it more for, like the true logging on the system side.
I actually have this problem right now. I'm just trying to work through with the guys that work around like is the ideal logging. It's like logging, observability, experimentation, and like eval kind of setup. I really want Langsmith, obviously, because I'm biased. I just said, like, can you guys just research it and see what you prefer? We use Sentry as well, like a lot of teams do. But I was surprised when I went in there. I was like, well, they haven't really Like it seems like a very native adjacent kind of space for a company like that. Just like, well, like let me do my tracing as well, or like maybe they could just, I don't know. I'm surprised that those bigger logging companies haven't just purchased companies like Langfuse or built their own off these open source communities. And then actually,
Yeah.
so you can visualize, like I was like, oh yeah, I've got the failure rates, but I need to visualize like the next thing is like, click it, tell me what it is. But then they're like, well, Langsmith doesn't do all of my other observability shit that I've got to do across every other part of the stack. Cause there's a lot of moving parts, right? It's kind of a gap. I'm like, why don't, like, it seems like a natural easy expansion. And then I'm trying to work in the OpenAI because we're an OpenAI kind of exclusive model kind of use, at least within that part of the business I work in. Some other guys use Bedrock and some other bits and pieces, but I was building a bunch of evals this week, and it's crap. Like it's not easy to use. It's not like a delightful kind of user experience. It's almost like they just have like seeded that ground and said like it's only a developer first, like API first experience. And then they just like give away the rest to, I don't know, all of these other providers we're talking about. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like unified enough. If you're really going to build like integrated AI native kind of software, it doesn't feel like the infrastructure is like mature enough.
I think it's always been that way, but maybe developers are there's more like clear the lines are less clear, maybe. Developers are getting more exposure to I don't know, the back end infrastructure type of stuff, maybe. But it like and you were talking about it's surprising that Sentry, maybe there's overlap between Langsmith and Sentry, but like there are so many different specialized areas and always have been. And I wonder if it will stay that way or like you said, I mean,
Mm. Well, what I was actually also running up against is how roles are changing, right? Like, so I'm a product person in this context, but now we are enabled into kind of more technical environments, people like myself. But then, like, engineering organizations haven't matured in a way that probably needs to reflect how these things are changing. Like, I'm doing evals and kind of quite technical kind of like evaluation work and integration work and experimentation on top of which is sort of stepping on the toes of traditional engineering kind of roles, and these things are all blending together. Yeah, like particularly in my domain, because I'm not I'm not like what you would consider, say, like a DevOps or a more technical product manager. Sorry, not DevOps, like a developer centric one, where every product manager, based on everything that I've heard, everyone's becoming more technical. But if you're selling a product, if you're
a
building a
modern
product, yeah, if you're building a product for developers, technically, traditionally, like the product managers are more technical, but now it's like, it doesn't really matter. This is what we were referring to around this Claude Opus thing,
yeah,
right?
this is a great graph here.
Yes. These guys, metr.org, they published this, yeah, it says here 19th of March, 2025, and they've just been updating it sequentially. And the whole thing was just tracking long horizon tasks for software engineering across all the frontier models and the success rate. And you can see like Claude GPT 5.1 Codex Max, the task length bracket prior to Claude Opus 4.5 was 2 hours and 53 minutes with a huge confidence interval, like it's like between an hour and 20 minutes and 6 hours or so at a 50% success rate. So it could work for a long time and then half of the tasks would be completed. Claude Opus 4.5 is task length of more than double that, 4 hours and 49 minutes. But the confidence interval on that is like the differential, or like 95%, is an hour and 45 to 20 hours. It does change though when you look at the success rates. The Claude Opus 4.5 success rate time, if you up it to like 80% success rate, is between 7 minutes and an hour and 26 minutes. Whereas actually GPT 5.1, I was surprised by this, 5.1 Codex Max, task length is about 30 minutes for that 80% success rate. But
Right.
the trend is clear, right? Like this is just, frontier is just getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. It's incredible.
Yeah. And we're talking about tasks. This is the task level. And actually there's a range. Like if you hover over any of the dots, yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll say
The time,
between
the time range.
Yeah, 1 hour and 49 minutes to 20,
And 20
hours.
hours. Yeah.
But that's per task. And then if you, of course, chain tasks, have multiple tasks, I mean, that's insane. And it's very obvious that we're on like that trajectory is
Yeah. And that's why as soon as I started like seeing all of these things course through my feed and I could see some of the validation going on and then got that harness like semi working and tried some other people's, I'm like, well, then the next most natural thing is to go and hunt for high throughput tokens, right? It's basically just like, just give me as many tokens as I can get on a decent reasoning kind of coding enabled model. Because then you can just spin these things up if you've got a coordinator. You can literally get so much leverage. Like the leverage that this enables is compelling. And I'm
because of
surprised.
the speed and the
And the
ability
success
to have to
and the
run
success
long.
rate. Yeah, so like successful outputs. And I was listening to successful outputs and the long horizon. So you can give it like more meaty, chunky tasks. And then I was actually doing an evaluation of that. Like, that's why I went to Cerebrus, but there's a bunch of others out there. And the fact that GLM 4.7 it's not at the level of Claude Opus 4.5, but it's pretty high. So you can offload these more narrower tasks and have a long horizon, like smarter model over the top as a harness. Like, yeah, it's absolutely amazing. One of the things actually, I listened to an interview with the artificial analysis guys. I didn't realize one of these is a Kiwi. The guys that started this is they actually have a new benchmark that they run. It's pretty interesting kind of to hear how they do all their benchmarks and stuff, which is this one, the AA Omniscience Index, which basically is like a benchmark of reliability and hallucination. And they mentioned like one of the things on this is sort of a reflection or maybe a quantification of like the quote vibes of some of the Claude models, is that they have like a really high score when it comes to their ability to not hallucinate and avoid giving the incorrect answer. So in the context of, say, these compounding long trend tasks, if it's got that skill set, interestingly also Gemini 3 Pro in this benchmark does, then it's less likely to have those compounding kind of looped errors. When in the past, when you're getting like an agent just to do stuff and then just make a mistake, you could see it happen in the say the Claude kind of thinking traces or whatever it is that gets showed. And then it just compounds and compounds and compounds for the longer it goes. That's their thesis anyway as to why these things have started to occur. And also I know that was the OpenAI team also benchmarked this and started recording it when they released GPT 5.2, although interestingly, that's not on this one. Oh no, here it is, 5.2. 5.1 high. Yeah. All right. You got any other news stuff we should quickly touch on? What else do you have in here before we get into the demos?
I don't know on the news side. Tom, one day you brought up that artificial analysis. You were talking about when you're working with the newest models and the LLMs are like, let me change this back to GPT 3.5 because 4 doesn't exist.
Christ, that's annoying.
I made an MCP server for you for that. And I think it works. I've been using it actually, and I think it works well. It's easier I've had a couple times where it still has that issue. I just say list models, and then it's like boom, boom, boom. But it reminded me because I'm pulling in some info from artificial analysis. So I'll send that to you, put it in the show notes, and anybody can use it.
Mate, that's sick. I wonder if we should make that into a Claude skill. It's like, because that is
you could
so annoying.
Right.
So annoying. The only other thing I wanted to mention,
I've been doing a lot of those little, like that's something that it doesn't require private storage. It doesn't need a API key. Like that can be a open MCP server that doesn't require, sign up and credentials and all that. So I have a lot of those things. I'll put a list together, or I have a list, but anyways.
The only other, yeah, cool. Chuck it on the vault, mate. Just chuck it in the vault. It's all going to the vault. Go to the website. With buildaipod.com. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to mention is this, which you might not have had a chance to read, but I found it pretty interesting, which is this blog post from Tomás Tungus, a guy, VC I follow a fair bit. So while we were on the break, Meta announced that they were going to buy Manus, which is this Singapore-based kind of agent company, right? Apparently this deal may have already fallen over as a result of this Chinese government Communist Party trying to block it. Either way, it's an interesting price set. And one of the challenges around these kinds of like AI native startups is how to value them, because the valuation models are completely different. And basically this model is this approach is an attempt to try and quantify the kinds of businesses up and down the stack just based on gross profit per token. which I've found interesting. And it gives you a sense of like where each like gross profit multiple per token throughput. So you can basically just say the kind of company that they are, the total tokens, and then the gross margin to get a native valuation out of it based on the category. So for example, Manus acquisition was, offer anyway, 2.5 billion. Just as a side note, I met the go-to-market manager of Manus at a conference last year. He'd just joined them from one of the Binance, I think was where he went from. I'm like, what's it like? And he's like, oh, it's what did he say? It's like an extreme 699 startup where he's like 6 days a week, 9 to 9. And he's like, and it's the extreme version of that. I'm like, that sounds horrendous. He said it's just like, they were just like grinding the shit out of them. Yeah. So basically it's like Manus disclosed 100 million in ARR, achieved within 8 months. It's incredible. Offer processing rate of 147 trillion tokens since they launched, which really gives you a sense of like throughput of some of these like agent companies, right?
Yeah, I did the math actually after reading this. I was like, yeah, that's however many $1 billion.
Yeah. So it's
So,
interesting. Yeah. So like monthly tokens would be, you would assume it couldn't be just divided by that. But, if you take that as a rough estimate, it's like 16 trillion tokens a month at a valuation of 2.5 billion with gross margins of 50%. Now he's just got like rough estimates. This is back of the napkin stuff. So the gross profit per token multiple is about 50x. So that's like a consumer level agent startup is about 50x its gross margin plus the token throughput, which you could consider token throughput to be a rough estimate of share, so market share. I don't know. I thought it was a cool model. Whereas like Together, which is like an inference provider, they've got like it's like a monthly tokens is 60 trillion. Their valuation is 3.3 billion. So there's like 24x multiple. I don't know. It's interesting to see the market coming together on some of these things where there's like very vastly outweighted multiples. Now some of these are VC rounds, which are overvalued versus like actual acquisitions, which is more of a, I'm going to give you cash for this actual business. Yeah. I thought it was pretty interesting.
well, yeah, and I guess it seems pretty like you're just measuring the efficiency of your revenue. Like, why do you think this is all of a sudden catching people's attention? Because it's kind of, in some ways, really basic, like
Yeah.
profitability.
Well, actually, I'm not sure. I think it's basic, but it's the entire market. All of us, we're all trying to figure out like, what does this new world look like? And the new world is a gross dollar profit potential, right? As opposed to a gross margin kind of opportunity. Whereas in traditional software, gross margins were the dream. In here, this is a traditional COGS model, right? Which is very different to not very different to what software was in the past, where you had to like ship people CDs and floppy disks and stuff, right? It's like there was actual COGS attached to distribution. This is much more like cloud computing, right? But the question is in here, it's like if you look at the business that had the analogy in the past to AI companies, AI software companies, it was cloud computing. But cloud computing is a commodity infrastructure business, whereas these ones are every layer of the stack has like token throughput, right? You can be a legal, company like Harvey that has that's like a B2B kind of user outcome or business outcome kind of AI native, which has the same COGS model as Together AI, which is an inference provider. But so it then brings in this concept of value per token or value created per token and the total gross dollar potential of those tokens. So if you are an end AI, AI enabled software company or any kind of company, you don't have to be a software company. And your thesis is, I can convert a certain percentage of the labor budget within my category into my AI native kind of process. That will take this many tokens, but this many tokens, like on a gross dollar profit potential of like so many billions of dollars, those tokens have a higher value than if I was just providing the inference for that, right?
Yeah.
So the market is trying to figure out how to value these things properly. And as the market comes together with these like sell and buy validations, because they all have this token model that you can kind of use it as a heuristic to get a sense of like, well, how valuable are those tokens? What's the market think about the potential of that category?
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to have a common scale that everyone's measuring to. But I guess when you talk about measuring like different types of, like different business models, but using the same metric, I guess that actually makes a lot of sense. Very helpful.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of financy boring gap metric. I don't know. It'd be interesting if eventually we just had like a profit per token multiple. It was just like what you put on your pitch decks. I'm estimating they have a profit per token multiple of like 180 because I'm going to, convert, I don't know, nuclear scientists who usually get paid this amount of money into this category of software. I don't know. But maybe I should put that as a metric on the universe calculator, the agent universe.
I don't remember in this article, like if you were to say VCs are looking for X number,
I don't.
you know how they're like, well, ARR has always been a big focus, and now maybe that's gone up. You need like significantly more ARR to get attention. So what does that mean for gross profits per token? I mean, I don't remember if it mentioned here.
It's not really an article. This is like a short blog post. He only really ever does these short things. But like in the past, say if you had 100 million in ARR or 10 million, like they're all in the SaaS world, they're always just these like very light, loose calculations. It was just what's your growth rate? Once you're at a certain level, it's like a standard multiple on revenue. In this world, like they're all trying to get their stage multiple kind of variables right. And the fact that now we all have this COGS model to deal with, they have to kind of have some other kind of gradient into future value that can give them the multiples to make, particularly in the VC world, to make the asset class make sense because they're not used to that like gross dollar kind of vibe. Now, I'm not an expert in it. Like there's lots of other people who are more not informed on this, but I've found it interesting as a method to try and like assess, all right, even if you've got ideas, you could just quickly on the back of a napkin trying to figure it out, right? Yeah. For example, like what we're about to talk about, agent harnesses, like that's definitely app layer, and the multiple, like the gross, like what would the gross dollar multiple on something like Cursor be? You could find out they probably like publish their tokens per month, figure out what their valuation is, or someone like OpenAI, right? And then you can kind of get a sense of some of these companies, they're going to, like Anthropic, they're talking about going public this year. So like you could try and use it as method to try and get a sense of like their listing valuation versus like your expectation of how big could they be, and whether you should buy now or wait. Yeah, that's sort of what I was using it for as well, or what kind of premium you're paying on their tokens, like their token valuation relative to their category. Sorry, GP multiple based on token throughput. Can I call it that? Anyway, let's talk about, let's get into the demos if you can. I don't really have anything else to mention other than this. I just want to show you this. This was my favorite thing that I saw on the internet while you were away.
Yeah.
It's just a guy wearing a helmet with a robot that matches his movements. It's the perfect analogy for like coding with Claude Code.
Yep.
Oh, so good. All right. How do you want to hit this, mate? Do you want me to just talk you through? Do you want to intro it? What do you want to do?
Yeah. I think, the other day we connected and you started telling me about this and I was lost right out of the gate. So I think to my first question, I was like, are we coding here or are we doing something with like a desktop? Like that's where start from the very, very beginning. Like what is it? And I know you'll do a fantastic job of that, but.
Well, I obviously did a terrible job when we spoke before. This is a weekend kind of vibe coded project that I put together after seeing a bunch of similar projects, similar things, and come together basically to solve this problem of I was sitting, with a bunch of vibe coding tasks and projects that I'm some for work, some for personal. Claude Code is excellent. It's very slow. The throughput is just too slow, right? And so as a lot of us have experimented with, so you spin up multiple Claude Code instances, or maybe you work across multiple projects at the same time. So you're working on, I don't know, one branch of something, and then you switch into some other project and like nudge Claude along. I was then like expanding out because I really hadn't properly experimented with some of these proper kind of terminal manager tools like Warp, Ghosty, Tmarks, a bunch of these things. But that context switching is super annoying if you're working across projects. What I really wanted to do is just focus in on one idea or one project and then have more token throughput, but have the actual outcome be the same as if I was working with one instance of Claude Code, right? I don't want to have to deal with like hardcore merge failures. I don't want to have to deal with like go across like a work tree. And then sometimes you're just waiting anyway because one agent's just sitting there going, well, I'm just waiting for agent 4 to be finished on that part of the branch because then my task in the roadmap is like comes sequentially after that, right? And then I don't know if you've had that experience. So
yeah,
how do you get a bunch of highly capable coding agents to work together? That's the general idea. And a bunch of other people have been working on this recently, and there's heaps of different harnesses, and I want to show you some example ones that just really are delightful in terms of like how cute they are. There are commercial companies around that we have talked about in the past. These guys, Factory, theirs is built on a LangGraph and LangChain, so I'm more familiar with these because I saw them talk about some of their approach.
I think they have multiple frameworks. Like you
Yeah,
can build agents and choose if you want LangGraph or I think Crew, some others.
right. Okay. I thought they built their native one, which is the Droid, on LangGraph, but I could be wrong. I have to revisit that. But that's where I heard about these guys, is through the LangChain community. These guys, they call them droids, and it's kind of like a Claude Code competitor, right? You can spin up multiple ones. There's Open Code, which is something you use as well. Occasionally. I haven't really used this that much, but this is an example of an open source kind of community one where you can hack it. The general trend that is being described is that because of this factor that we talked about before around like long running and high success software engineering tasks with agents, means that a lot of our experience will shift away from an IDE into just managing a swarm or multiple agents in some sort of coordinated harness context. The software interface, or the user interface for coding, will shift away from an IDE first thing, which is like the way that these coding agents came in, the Cursor classic one, where you've got the agent on the side panel and you're working in the code and you can see it, you can approve, into a agent native environment, which is kind of like Codex. And these guys have versions of this. They have the agent manager, etc. And then Claude Code's probably like the strongest competitor in that space that's had that perspective for the longest time, which is like Claude, like the Anthropic guys didn't launch IDE, right? They always had this perspective that it's agent first. So that's the context, right? Does that make sense that time? That's where this category is going.
Perfect. Yep.
Perfect. All right. So in the intervening time, I heard an interview with, and you probably also saw like this thing called Ralph Mode kick off with a bunch of people. I love the fact
I
that
have
it's called.
started seeing that everywhere, and I have not checked it out yet. Yes, tell me about this. I'm super curious.
So
it's
this
like
is
a loop. It helps keep things moving, I guess.
Well, it's literally just this. So like, I love that they've called it Ralph Mode or Wiggum Mode. It's been around for a while. This guy, Jeffrey Huntley, apparently kind of came up with it. I'd never heard about this guy before, but it's basically like just a loop, like just in this example here from like the deep agents kind of Wiggum Mode kind of setup is like, the task might be build a Python course, which is very expansive and pretty and not defined. That goes into the agent. It just goes and logs what it's done. And then there's a loop that says, keep running, go back here, keep going, go back here. And then you just check back in. So you just turn it on, or you might have a virtual server or whatever, and it's just running in the background, and you get up in the morning and you just see where it's gotten to. That's the whole idea of this like Wiggum mode. And lots of people are talking, a big game about this.
It just keeps it. It's just so that it's like when people run dangerously with no permissions or whatever the command. But it's like
just keep going
to keep it going, so you don't even have to press enter or anything, right? So this is just like that maximized.
Well, and I guess the bet is this is like a loop on the bet that the hallucination rates are pretty low. The models are now actually pretty smart, and the reasoning kind of nature of them enables them to basically have a degree of self-determinism around the outcomes. So you just go back and you go into the task. It just goes into the agent harness. In this case, it would be deep agents. It goes in and it checks the plan. It looks at the file system, figures out what's been done, interrogates the code, decides what to do next, goes through, completes that task. It goes in the loop again, and it just goes in the loop, and you just see what happens, right? That's Ralph mode.
So
now,
are people making their own versions of this? Because I could have swore I saw a post where someone said, I paid $100 for Ralph. I was like, is that like a fork and people are making custom versions? Or is it really just one?
Well, like Ralph, like it's not a product, right? It's just a thing. Like it's just an idea that like you just run an agent in a loop multiple times over time and see what code comes out the end, or see what comes out the end of it. So it's just like, that's just the idea. I don't know. People probably have jumped on it and released products and a bunch of shit. But
yeah. But you think Jeffrey Huntley, the OG one?
He just said it was that's just the link here. It says like, this is the autonomous coding pattern. Here we go. Yeah. Ralph Wiggum as a software engineer Oh God, I just love the fact that it's Ralph Wickham. Yeah. So this is like one of the, yeah, there you go. That's, it's just a while loop. Just do this. Just keep going. It's kind of like, I guess, like it's not a new idea. Like people would say, like they just queued messages to, Claude that would just say, keep going with their queue up prompt, keep going, or like, evaluate everything that's happened so far and then keep going. Like, and they would just have like 20 of those. Like, so it's not new, right? But the intimation is that things have gotten much better. So in the context of that, there's two guys that I think are worth giving a shout out to in the context of this that I thought were very good when I was doing this research. And they are Jeffrey Emanuel and Steve Yegi. Steve Yegi is a pretty well-known developer, right? And he, I think he founded a company called SourceGraph, but then he's had a bunch of projects as well. He's been in the industry for a very long time. He came up with this project called Beads, which is basically just like a memory store and task tracker for coding agents that stores those things in like a local SQL-like kind of database. Interestingly, like when I was reading through this and then I was reading that memory architecture kind of post from Harrison about the Deep Agents package, they're very similar, like by the sounds of it, like they're actually quite similar. Then this guy, Jeffrey Emanuel, he's a very interesting kind of indie hack. He's an ex like quant trading kind of guy who also built a bunch of like developer tools, and he created a thing called the Beads Viewer, which is one of his open source projects on top of Steve Yegi's thing. And then I listened to an interview with Steve Yegi on the Swix podcast, where he talked through some of this stuff, which is what got me thinking about this. Jeffrey Emanuel also has this project called MCP Agent Mail, which is an interesting kind of idea. And this is his like what he calls his agent kind of flywheel harness of all of these different projects that he has. I'll just go to the basic one here, which is, this is very cool, Mail. Here we go. Agent Mail. The whole idea is that, all right, you've got a swarm of coding agents. You've built a plan. This is an MCP agent like inbox effectively for them to communicate with each other about what they're doing, what they've done. It's sort of inter-agent communication. And then he put that in his kind of stack of things. There's this Beads Viewer, which is like a terminal way to kind of interact with like what tasks are being tracked, what's being picked up. And then he also has this idea of CAS, which is effectively like a local conversation vector store kind of semantic search function for your agents, so that they're constantly checking in. This is my understanding of it anyway, constantly checking in like learnings and patterns, and then they are able to get the information that they need very rapidly across, say, the code base, things that have been done in the past, what other agents are doing. The whole idea is that his package here, which is this agent flywheel setup, which is something I went through this week, which is really cool, is a combination of tools that enable you to build this swarm kind of effect. So this is his AI agents who are coding for you. His is a bit more technical, but the whole idea is that you can have like these component parts of that multi-agent developer framework all combined together, and then you can execute like a high-level task or a high-level project, and then spin up these sub-agents that will have the ability to collaborate, the ability to manage the tasks that they're working on, coordinate like what they're doing and broadcast that to other agents within the swarm, check that in, and basically continue working on different tasks. The interesting thing about this and his approach was his perspective is that like you don't need multiple branches. You don't need any of this like Git worktree stuff. All you need is just to get the agents to lock files when they're editing them, and that's it. So that one agent can't overwrite a file at the same time as another, which is interesting and probably a bit counter to a lot of other people and what they think. And his opinion about that is basically if you do this like worktree thing, you're just deferring the problems around code merge, like the merge issue, to the end of the process anyway. So you may as well just get them to sort that out whilst they're doing things and whilst they're doing work.
I was just very happy to hear him say that, because that's kind of how I felt as well, like running into all these merge issues and different coordination problems. And so I also have not been using like the work trees and all this different stuff. I kind of have my own like synchronization method, and so to hear someone else say that, I was like, okay, I'm not just doing it wrong. And
Okay.
so this project, like the big deal, that was one of the key things for me, is that it does a very, very good job of the agents collaborating and making sure that they're not conflicting and creating merge issues, and they take care of all of that autonomously, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the promise. Like Well, this is all new, right? And this is this is quite interesting. I'd recommend going through this setup if you want, because it's pretty sick what he's got here, which is a way to set up like a virtual private server. So I went through this week and got one set up to try it out as like basically like a spec'd up machine with a bunch of RAM, so that you could run a swarm, because like my laptop just can't handle that many Claude Code or Codex like instances running, because they all take like 2 gigs of RAM apparently. So yeah, whenever I've been doing this work this week, my machine has just been flaming off. Although you probably could just get like I don't know. I'm actually thinking of just getting a desktop, like a Mac Studio instead. But so that's really cool. There's a bunch of other components in here.
And so what kind of virtual machine are you running? Like a Linux box or something remote?
I used his recommendations, to be honest, because I'm not au fait with like all the trade-offs. This is what he was recommending, which is a Ubuntu 24, version 24 or higher. And he's got like actually set this up so you can just run a bunch of these commands and get it running pretty fast. So he's made it like really sick for noobs like me. And then Contabo is the one that he recommends, which is just high, like pretty low cost. There's other ones as well. There's like Hertzinger or Hostinger,
Yeah.
but they're much cheaper than cloud providers, like the leading cloud providers. I think I got like the 96 gig one. I just rented that for a month to see. And then,
well, Tom, if I remember right, the other day I was running some things and I thought the same. And I believe it's a lot of disk IO. Like, some things are high, they take a lot of RAM or high compute. I think this was a lot of, because it's like reading and writing so much.
right.
So if you're getting bottlenecked, maybe look at that. I don't know that for a fact, but that was kind of the feeling that I was getting.
Okay. Well, so the difference, I guess, like like the weekend I did this, my kind of side project, I sent it to him and I was like, hey mate, like I've just tried to build something on top of what you've done. And then he brought out this one pretty quickly as well. And he's like bringing out a bunch of stuff. So like keep an eye on him. He's pretty impressive guy. The key differential is he's got this set up as like this is a quick start for like getting it running in a virtual server. So you can just run it all the time. Right? You can just check in with your agents and they just keep going with tmux, like keeping the session alive and all that sort of stuff. So my attempt at bringing that together was to basically build this thing called Jetpack, which is basically a combination of those packages, or a minimal number of those packages with a couple of different tweaks. But the goal of this was basically just to give me one entry point where I can manage a plan, create a plan, set up my project folder, and then use the coding tools I'm used to, like Claude Code or Codex or whatever it is, and then have these tools effectively execute in the background, and for me to be able to have an interface on top of them. So I could see what the agents were doing. I could observe or broadcast into those agents if I wanted to via the MCP mail kind of server. I could see and track and push items into the backlog, into the beads backlog, kind of like a product manager, and then develop like my plans for the app over the top of it and maintain kind of some degree of control and observation. So that was the goal of Jetpack, and the whole idea. And just shout out to V0. V0 is just like excellent now. Like this was a very limited kind of there's a website build and it's just amazing. Like, so these are the components, right? There's beads. V0 just like punched this out. So it was so good. I started taking the V0 designs and pushing it back into Claude that was actually building Jetpack and saying, make it look more like this, because this is awesome. Match the animations.
It looks really nice.
This is one shot, right? One shot in V0. Like, unbelievable, man. So that's beads, basically like tracking. And beads has this natural kind of epic to task to subtask to leaf kind of hierarchy, which I wanted to have matched in there with like task flow states. And these are the key operations, obviously. So that's just pulled straight from the beads kind of package. Then there's MCP mail. So the idea is, here's the inbox. I also wanted in Jetpack the ability to broadcast into the agents and also to see what they're communicating and why. That needs work. It's not pretty much there. There's this CAS, which is the vector embeddings for semantic search over the top. I got an implementation of this running so that you could use the OpenAI like embedding model if you want. I haven't really, to be honest, tested this out. I just only introduced it because Jeffrey Emanuel said it was important and it had some sort of performance benefit, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. And then the final part was this agent controller over the top. I was thinking it would be interesting. I don't know if this is the right idea, but interesting to have like an autonomous kind of orchestrator that monitors and manages everything that's running outside of your kind of interface, which might be Claude Code, where you're actually just like updating the plan, those sorts of things. I don't know if that's the right view. I'm kind of.
You had a supervisor.
It's a supervisor, yeah, and it was a LangGraph kind of supervisor kind of agent.
But you had separate a controller and a supervisor separately, right? Or am I?
I think it has the. We should check that. I believe it's like an area where you can interface. So that's like the interface agent, and then it's like a sub agent that does the actual coordination work. But it's just one part of the app, I guess. Yeah. So that's an overview. Should we spin it up, or did you manage to get it working? Like, I also managed to put in a bunch of like create an NPM package and a bunch of other shit that's sort of probably half working that I should probably fix before we push this out.
Well, the NPM package is not there. I couldn't. Maybe you haven't published it like on the internet yet, but otherwise, like I cloned the repo and I did get it running, and then I actually forked it, and I don't remember exactly where I landed, but I started messing around with some. First, I just wanted to get it running and kind of get an idea how it works, and then I started tweaking a little bit. So, Tom, you spin this up at the project level, right?
Yes. The whole idea was, I should push this change because I updated the documentation actually to make the documentation better. The whole idea was like, I want it to be within a project, kind of like Claude, like a Claude instance would be within a project. And you fork it and then you can like get it started. Let's see where my changes actually are. Sorry, doing this live.
The logo is really cool.
Cool.
How'd you come up with that?
That was Gemini, Nano Banana. And
yeah, you're going to get sued by Banksy, man.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. Don't know what you're talking about. So good. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the documentation's been updated. I might just push that while we're here, just so I don't forget. There we go. All right. Should I just get an example running up here and show you? Do you want to show it on your machine before?
No, go ahead and run it on yours. And I guess as far as the setup goes, it's a project level setup. And then right away, I made a cheat sheet for how to install the MCP, how to install the Claude Code Marketplace plugin. Like there's like 3 or 4 different ways to interface with this setup, right? So
yeah,
what's the right way? How are you doing it?
I was just doing it like, well, it was pretty meta. So I was getting a bit kind of too down in the rabbit hole because I was using Jetpack to build it. So it was all the same. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting a bit like recursive. So I had to like set up a new thing and just go, all right, just go and build something from scratch. But I was just using, so like cloning it and then just using these basic quick starts. Some of that stuff should be updated in the documentation now that you can see, which I'll link out. So you can see like, starting it, there's like quick start examples and then the install options. That NPM install doesn't work yet. You're right, because I need to update the NPM package. But even that, man, like just the fact that someone like me can build a CLI tool plus publish into an NPM package is just amazing. Like I know what I'm doing with like front end stuff and basic websites, but like that was all just like out of reach for me. Even to the point where I was like, I was doing through the Jetpack CLI. I was like, this is a bit hard to use. Claude, can you just add a few like help functions on top of it? And it's like, yeah, no problem. Here you go. Like, so good.
Have you run into instances? Like I've had a lot of projects that I've kind of put on pause or abandoned completely. And then later on, as the technology is better and I have different tools come back and it's like, oh, I actually knocked that out. No problem. Like, have you had that happen? Because this is a big step. And like you just said, there probably are a lot of things in the past where you're like, man, I couldn't get that to work quite right. And you might be able to take some old ideas and actually execute on them.
Should do that actually, just go through and that would be a good test. What I actually did was like, I said to my wife, who's not technical, she's like, I just said, look, what's some software that you want to exist? Like, and then she gave me like 3 or 4 ideas. I'm like, all right, sweet. I'm just going to set up a bunch of different new things and just like describe it, build the plan and see, and just leave it for like 24 hours and see what happens and see how far it gets. But I should do it with all my old projects, right? All packages, it's just like go for it. The only problem is I haven't, All right, so here's like the basic. If I just say Jetpack start, see what happens. Nope, Claude. Give me a second. Let's do it through Claude. Jetpack complete guide. All right, start Jetpack, my friends. Let's see what happens. At least I can show you the interface. While that's kicking off, I landed on using Ghosty as like the terminal manager. It's very nice, better than Warp. I don't like Warp is just like you keep hitting these paid variants. It's just very unpleasant. All right, here we go. So there's my Claude, and here's an example you can see. So this is basically the interface that it built, and the whole idea being, as I was saying before, is like you can see this is a visualization of the beads kind of database that's in this project. This is basically an example, so it's sort of doesn't make too much sense, but you can see you've got your inbox here, and I can see my different agents, and I can see all the mail. I can, see that's basically just an alert. I can then broadcast to all of my agents with a priority state and then require them to acknowledge they've received the message, even if they're working. There is this nesting level needs work based on how I want to interface this and integrate it with how Claude develops plans so that those are nested correctly across like epics, tasks and subtasks. That's okay. And then what I wanted was to try and get it to be a reflection of what you actually see and actually see the progress against each of the tasks by agent type as they're working over the top as you spin them. So if it's like slowing down, you can spin up more agents. If some of them are failing or if they've been running for too long, you can go and interrogate it without having to actually look at each terminal. And then there's also a Kanban view here. And but you can't like move those over because they're just basically this. The whole idea of this is that the agents just come in and get stuff. Oh, what happened with that? That's broken then. Shouldn't be happening. The whole idea is that this is like just something that gets picked up and you can just see it happening. And then you can inject tasks as well. I don't necessarily like that idea. I think that should probably happen from the coordinator.
So you can broadcast to all of the agents from here, right? But then to respond to individual, then you go back to whatever session, like in the terminal, or can you respond to them?
That is a great question. I wonder if I can actually do that. No, I think the intent of this, based on my understanding and the package of MCP agent mails, is not really for you. Like, I don't think, not really for you as a person. And this broadcasting is probably, I don't know if Jeffrey Manuel would like that too much. His whole idea of this is just for them to communicate with each other so that they know what they're working on, not really for us. Then there is these two areas, which is projects and plans, right? This isn't as well scoped as I would like, but the whole idea of this is that you could create plans or view plans that have been generated via the CLI with the tasks nested within them. So you can then go and create other plans via an interface. This is actually quite cumbersome and slow. So I actually think probably we should get rid of this and just make it like a CLI, or just like Claude code, because it's way faster and better for Claude to create the plans. You can see how many agents you have. And then I also integrated wanted to create the concept of you could see the CLI process that they were going through and actually raise that and then spawn new agents with agent kind of profiles. So the harness type, and then inject your skill set or develop your skills to enable them into certain agents within the swarm and customize the system prompt. I don't know if that's, And then that's memory visual. Super cool. This is the CAS component, which is like the memory visualization where you should be able to see stored memories for the project and then retire them or truncate them or get rid of them. This was hard to figure out because it was getting quite large. And also if there was a lot of noise coming in from different ideas. So if you spin up multiple plans, that's an unsolved problem. Is how do I demarcate? And then this was the final one was the supervisor one, right? Which is what we were talking about before, where there's a LangGraph supervisor and you can then just directly interact with that supervisor from here. That's it, man.
So that's the fact kind of an ad hoc over the top of everything.
Yeah. Over the top of everything, have some sort of supervisor in the UI that you can just interact with. I kind of wanted that because I kind of wanted to see I like the deep agents harness, right? I like that. And I think it's quite an intelligent kind of system, but I think it conflicts with some of the other underlying packages, right? Because you got beads as the memory manager, but if that guy has its own manager, probably not a great idea. Ooh.
So Tom, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say this isn't perfect. Obviously it's built on a bunch of other stuff, but just the amount of progress you can make on a project in a short amount of time is just so compelling these days. It's so delightful.
And you said you're using GPT Pro for the planning, right in the web interface, and then you create a plan and then you're building off that plan? Or using
for this interface, you mean here?
Yeah, just in general, your overall process. Because I know you mentioned something about GPT Pro was like got a lot of benefit from it.
I had seen Jeffrey Emanuel's talk about that, and that was his process where he often goes out into GPT Pro with like the status, gets it to develop its ideas and brings it back into here for execution, or back into his process for execution. What I actually did was like I paid for the max subscription for this month, and I just want to use it and get Codex instances running in here as well, so that I could see like Gemini. That's why I wanted these different agent harnesses in the agent types, just to see what the difference is and like what they're better at or how they work together, like Codex and Gemini. So that was the context. I don't have an answer on that yet. Like I don't use Codex really. So I don't know about you, but I only really use GPT for thinking
Really,
tasks and analysis tasks.
Yeah, if I'm having problems, sometimes I'll kick it with, I'll try something else like Codex.
Mm.
Well, Tom, I remember when anti-gravity came out, me in particular, I was like, man, I think this is the answer. This is exactly what we've been talking about from like a coordination, harness standpoint. What do you think that this combination of projects or this type of layout gets you that anti-gravity doesn't?
A
Or
second.
something
Well,
like,
the main thing is the interface, but to be honest, I don't know. I really don't know. When I've been using those tools, Lightweight, give me a second, Lightweight CRM, that is modern, minimal. And for tech startups, create this as a new sub project, creator. Oh yeah, that'll do. We'll see what it does with that. There, what I want to see is I want to see then spin up sub agents and begin work. Let's see what Claude does with this on the top of Jetpack. Yeah, so, well, these guys, they're pushing in this direction, right? And anti-gravity and Cursor, they have, like, they're pushed into this, like, cloud-based, like, agent runs, correct? But what they don't have, or they haven't gotten yet, is this agent coordination collaboration thing, right? How do you get a bunch of agents to work together to get to a positive outcome on a project based on a plan in a short amount of time with a high quality result? They haven't done that. And they haven't figured out a way to give the user, a user being like either a coder or a vibe coder or just a regular person, a great way to get their arms around that process, interact with it, intervene if they need to, manage the plans, get the outcomes. None of them have done that in my opinion.
yeah.
But they're coming out like this has happened in the last month, right? There's a lot of stuff happening around this now.
Now, this is exclusively using a swarm pattern, right?
When you say swarm pattern, what does that mean? All right, here we go. Why can't I get back into my...
This is something else I think is interesting. I don't know, 6 months ago, a year ago, was doing a lot of trying to build something out with swarm methodology, whereas every agent, or you could consider sub agents, every agent has access to the same memories.
Mm.
And they pass, like, instead of going back to a supervisor and checking in and saying, here's the result, and then the supervisor coordinating the next agent, it's the one supervisor over the top issuing the initial request, and then the agents can pass tasks to each other rather than going back to the supervisor. And that becomes a gigantic disaster very quickly. It's hard to control. And so I thought it was interesting that this seems to be fully built on that methodology, unless it's a little bit different than what I was doing in the past. But I guess my question is, every agent, so you have 3 agents here, do each of them see like all of the data, or do they have their own context windows? Like are they sub agents, or are they just true swarm agents? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you...
No, so they're not sub agents like you would think about it in Claude Code, right? These are separate instances of a separate Claude Code kind of terminal instance, if you can think about it that way, but works on the same directory, has access to the task list, and can communicate with all of the other instances running within the project. So it's not like your sub-agent equivalent, right? And so each instance is managing its own context and context window and looking at the bead like a shared beads kind of database around tasks, going and claiming those tasks and then using the MCP agent mail to communicate with each one. Each of these instances could be using those sub-agent function within Claude Code as well. I haven't played around with like trying to kind of configure that because it's all it all gets a bit inception after a while. But the main thing is the throughput. Like I want more throughput on the high quality coding entities or models, right? Which is Claude Max, like a Claude Max subscription, a Codex subscription, a Gemini one. How do you get mass throughput on a project so you can get from like start of something to like the end point within a day that may have taken a team of engineers a month in the past? Like that's the dream. And like the fact that I'm even like contemplating and testing this idea is just fucking phenomenal. Like these guys who built these tools that this is built on have thought about this a lot more than me and are a much better place to kind of interrogate the real problem set. But that's the general idea. As opposed to sub agents and offloading within that's like a different idea. It's also constrained based on the fact that we're all kind of working within our Claude Code or Claude Max subscriptions and all this other stuff. So the next thing I want to do is I want to configure this. I said this at the start of the show. Let's see what this is working on now and where is my... I just asked it to start this plan and initialize it. It is stopping the current jetpack instance and starting a new one with these tasks. What I want to do now is figure out what the sacrifice of quality would be if I moved a bunch of these into the GLM 4.7 instance, like use a Claude Code harness, or like, I don't know if you can do with the Codex one. You can with Gemini, right? The Gemini CLI. And then hook it up to Cerebrus together AI. So like basically as soon as I could see that this was kicking off and there was some sort of swarm kind of context going on, I just really want this to be able to open this so we can see it.
Are you talking about using a third-party provider with Claude Code? Is that what
Yeah. Or
man, you must have missed the drama.
Well, yes, yeah. Like, and I was actually going to ask you about that. So there was this drama where they're stopping people doing it, but there's also this Claude Code kind of SDK, right? Or is it like I could just use the OpenSUI example from LangChain? Would that be enough? Like, what would the compromise be? I guess it's sort of, I'm not really sure. I know the Gemini CLI, you can hack that because that's what like Quen and all those guys did, right? I know you've done a bunch of this stuff, but I just got to check what the background tasks are so I can see where this guy is running. Where is this guy running? 3,000. There we go. All right, here is the project. And let's see what it's doing. All that is loading. It's a bit slow. Let's go and look at the board. Here we go. All right, there's a few errors. Obviously, this is in development, live development. I asked it to set up a new project called Startup CRM. Basically, all I did was just give it like create me a startup, a CRM that's light and minimal, or primarily for startups. And then what is it working on here? What is happening? These are blocked by that. Okay, cool. This is where I want the interface so I can see like what's the actual process and what is actually being worked on, where the messages are going. Before I hand it over to you, because I think, yeah, we go. Okay, task claimed. This agent claimed that task. I only have one agent started here. So that's the general idea. Like, I'm working on this, like it needs to be worked on and refined. But what I really want to do is get GLM working with Together. I think Together AI is probably going to be better than, I know Fireworks, I think
Fireworks is the fastest one, I think, right?
I actually looked at this. So let's go and have a look at this because I was like, I really want to know.
Sorry, what did you say about, I guess Grok doesn't have 4.7, but did you have any thoughts on Grok in your test of speed and like what you're after? Because that's always, I mean,
I'm not
for a long time, Grok's like,
well, yeah. So I don't know. I might ask you about that. Like, this was the trade-off, right? Which is like, this is the intelligence benchmark for GLM 4.7, just above Grok, right? Grok 4 anyway. Kimi K2's like there is a pretty significant step down from like Opus 4.5, which is, on this meta benchmark of intelligence from these guys, which I really like. But it's the throughput and the price, right? So GLM 4.7 in terms of price per million tokens, what I want is speed, right? So like if I can get a swarm running, like if I can get similar outcomes from some of these agents, but have it like really high throughput, then that's what I was hoping for. And then, so if you look at the API provider, like benchmarks here, the output speed of say GLM 4.7 is 1,700 tokens per second from Cerebrus, but Fireworks is 429 tokens per second. So obviously significantly lower, but the difference in cost is huge. So when you actually look at it on the cost profile of jetpacks working in the background. Obviously, something's going on. Cerebrus, because I've been using this a fair bit for another task. When you actually look at the cost per tokens, you pay a premium with Cerebrus, which is fair enough based on what they can give you. That's pretty significant. Like GLM 4.7 speed, roughly 1,000 tokens per second, but you're paying $2.25 per million tokens in, $2.75 per million tokens out. I find if I'm scaling things up, like I hit that the request limit anyway pretty fast, whereas on Fireworks it's way lower. So I was thinking actually on that basis. So that was the next thing I wanted to do, was I wanted to see, can I get GLM 4.7 running, get a massive swarm of these things going, and see how far you can push the limit on multi-agent coordination and cost. GLM 4.7 here, yeah, input tokens 60 cents per million, outputs $2.20. With caching, like you imagine you could get a fair bit further down the path, even if you're only running at 460 tokens a second, whatever it was. Whereas you compare that to the tokens per second that I've got on Claude, Opus 4.5 tokens per second is like, it's like 20 tokens per second or something. It's ridiculous. It's so slow. I'm sure it's faster than 20, but you know what I mean? Like we're all sitting there just going, this is really annoying.
You get used to things pretty quickly. And then when you go backwards, you're like, this used to be awesome. Now it's so slow.
What's going on with this? All right.
I think what's interesting, there seems to be a shift. Like, we reference Simon Willison pretty often. I read in his end of the year newsletter, he said he's running everything with dangerously skip permissions. And I know a lot of people look to him. I mean, he's a big thought leader in the space. And I thought that was really interesting. And then like that's directly related to what we're doing here with, or did you actually, you're having to approve, but
I just forgot to start it.
Are you confident enough that you'll just let this run? Like, we're talking about overnight or walk away from it. What do you think?
I haven't gotten it to that point yet. Like I haven't gotten to that Nirvana-ish kind of point, right? But that's, what I want to do. I just want to go dangerously skip permissions and just go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah.
I have to show you this example and then I might hand it over to you. You can tell me what you found that was broken or give me some feedback. But like I've found a couple of these vibe harnesses. So these guys, Vibecraft, this one was so funny, which is, it's like a computer game kind of observation setting, which is so fun, where you can see like different instances running and see what's going on. You got to check out these visualizations, very funny. I wish I could show you an example one. But yeah, check that one out, Vibecraft. The other guys are like, all of these projects have come online within the last kind of like couple of days. It seems anyway to me, is this one code, which is from the guys that do First Dev, the MCP kind of UI marketplace. So they've got one as well, which is this like multi-agent kind of collaboration tool. And then this has got to be my favorite. Did you ever play World of Warcraft and Command and Conquer and those games? Oh, dude, just lost my youth to those games.
Just lost all my cred.
Oh no, I think of anything, you probably come out best between us. Look at this World of Warcraft.
I used to catch a bunch of shit from like working with developers and not knowing the references like Star Wars. Never got into that.
I think you'll be fine. But it looks like this, right? Like World of Warcraft original game. Like I saw this and I'm like, fuck, is this really where we're going? Is this what's happening? World of Warcraft. Here we go. Like it started looking like, I'll just mute that. Started out looking basically like this. Like this is what it looked like. You like got peasants and you click on stuff and it's all pixelated. Like it's so like old school computer gamey. This guy's building this version of that, which is in the agent orchestrator kind of dev world where it's built like a game. Like these agents come out and you just click on them. Like it's getting pretty hilarious. Like imagine if this is how you went to work, but actually these guys like that was like asking for a prompt. It comes out of the Swarmer front end design.
That was really weird. I was
How
helping
hilarious is this?
the kid with Minecraft the other day, and that actually kind of went through my head of like, and then it's at some point, where does this become the metaverse? Now we're back to hit this like episode 1, but this starts to become the metaverse, doesn't it?
I don't know, man. But like I saw this and I'm just like, fucking hell. Like, is this what's happening? Like, could you imagine like, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go to work. And now I'm just, it's like playing World of Warcraft, and then you spawn agents and they go over to their bits and they do their task and they come back. And it's like, It's a game. It's like a game. I thought that was very fun. I can't wait to see 1,000 more of these kinds of crazy harnesses come online. All right,
I
let's see
mean,
what
it sounds kind of wild, but you think about drone operators in the military, like
it's like. It's like a
they're
game.
ideal because video games, you know. So who knows?
All right, so what's going on here? He's picked up a couple of tasks. That one's finished. All right, cool. So you generally get the idea. It's not perfect, needs a lot of work, but it's sort of kicking along. Where is my.
Well, Tom, what I think appeals to me with this is it's set up. Like I said, you can use it in a lot of different ways. It has a MCP interface, Cloud Code Marketplace plugins, and that's the issue that we've had with like every product requires a different format for the MCP config or the agents. You know, now there's Agents MD, Claude MD. What I see is a streamlining of how to configure and set up your projects without like it's all going to be standardized, right? So yeah, I just think this is a lot easier to get up and going than some of the other things in the past.
Yeah, well, we'll see who comes out. We'll see how this shakes out, right? So maybe all of this will just go away because Claude Code, because those guys apparently are hiring a lot of people to work on Claude Code. Maybe they'll just come out with a much better execution of this, right? Like, and it'll just be abstracted away into the background and it'll just be the CLI. I just wish the CLI was made to be a richer experience as well. Maybe that's just me, but like, I don't like the CLI experience.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I didn't think we'd be here working in CLI, but I also like, I don't use the plugins in VS Code for some reason. I started out, or not started out, but I was using Klein a lot early on, and that's a plugin. It's not CLI. But now with Codex and Claude Code, you can use more of like a GUI setup. But for whatever reason, like I just don't like it. And I didn't think that would be the case.
You don't like it?
I didn't think that I would prefer using a command line interface, but I do. Like with Claude, I don't use the VS Code GUI plugin. I still use the terminal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you, yeah, where did you get with this when I asked you to have a look at it? Like, did you manage to actually get it running and do anything with it, or was it still all broken like my version
That's
here?
what I'm looking at the project. What I'm right out of the gate, I'm interested in, I think I mentioned it to you, I was like trying to first off understand all the various components. And then two, it's like, well, this is great running on your desktop, but what would this look like deployed in the cloud? So that's what I started looking at and kind of planning for. And I think I created the agent layer in the cloud, but I was looking at moving these components just to kind of test, like, what does this look like? What kind of flexibility does that give you? Because that's where, you know, like we've talked about, do we need a standardized interface for agent memory? So does something like this open up opportunities for new products like that? You know what I mean? Like if I had a cloud-based memory service and in Jetpack, all you do is add this one line or you add this command, this flag, you know, like each one of these components is a potential like cloud offering, I think.
Like, what would it take to get something like this into a cloud product? I have absolutely no idea. Like, what was some of the things? Could you, like, if I stop sharing my screen, can you show me what you've done?
It really depends because
this, I'll report back at the end of the episode on this
you're talking
progress.
about a virtual machine. Yeah, like really, you could run this as probably just set it up in Docker and run a Docker container. So that's kind of an easy, straightforward way. But then that can, depending how many people are using it, you know, how much, like all that is runtime usage based, and that can start to become expensive. So I focus on like serverless environments where you're only paying for like fractions of a second when they spin up. But yeah, I think, Tom, to answer your question, I think it's very complex. Like I said at the beginning, there's so many different layers and points of potential breakdown in this. So when it's running on your computer, it's pretty straightforward. But I don't know. Hopefully, I can answer more of that question later on. But that's kind of where I started going with it. And
did you manage to get it running? I don't know. Sure, if you've got anything you want to share.
Yeah, it's running. But as far as demo, I don't really know what it's doing here.
Yeah, because this is the funny thing about this.
I took the Cloudflare agents repo, and then I started Jetpack with the like baseline code of their SDK, and then I started planning for like replace these components with Cloudflare. And some of this stuff, I don't know that it's possible. Like the serverless environments, and it becomes very complex. So I don't know if that will be really doable or not. But I'm just kind of doing a initial run through and trying to get an idea on that.
The Cloudflare agents SD.
Yep.
What were you trying to achieve with this? Is the whole idea because this is compatible with basically like Cloudflare infrastructure, so you can actually run this. Like, can you run this Cloudflare agent starter on their infrastructure? Is that the whole idea?
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, but it works out of the
Yeah.
box, right? With Cloudflare.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at like potentially where you run a command to set it up, the initial setup, it launches, you log in, and then that you have your own private, like everything in the cloud memory. That would make it so you could just access your entire environment anywhere.
And this SDK,
So
this
like
agent
when
says,
you're talking about, oh, I want to do things on my phone, right? So that's a good example. So now that's the first problem that you have with Jetpack is, well, you have to have it all running in the cloud, right?
yeah, and I've seen a couple of those apps spin up around like, all right, it's like a mobile app that you can SSH into some sort of cloud kind of environment, right? Or like use tunneling. I've never done that with Claude Code where you can like tunnel into a session. I have no idea what that is or how it works or if it's reliable or anything. I'm just looking at this SDK, right? It has components of what we're talking about in this like Jetpack or all these other projects, right? Because it's got an agent SQL database per. How much of this stuff is just replicating? Like you could just throw away a bunch of that Jetpack work and just use, like how much of it is the same?
It's like a complete refactor. The code, you could be using the same concepts and kind of framework, but it's not like LangChain where you can have the same code and then switch out the provider name for the LLM. It's all like it's not it's not like that
Yeah,
at
okay.
all. No.
Right. Well, I guess what I was more asking is like, yeah, I got really excited about this Jetpack thing as a weekend project, but actually how much of this is just duplicating kind of other ideas that are out there in different ways and forms from other providers, I guess is more my question.
Well, we're talking about Lego blocks of infrastructure, like storage, inference. Like, I see what you're saying, but they just provide the building blocks. They don't have any of this really fully built out. But they do have things like scheduling, for instance. Like, if you want to have scheduled tasks, they have a scheduler, right? But you still have to do a lot of the programming. It's not just a plug and play type of thing.
Yeah, cool. Oh well, we might leave the demo there if you want. Like, watch this space. We'll see how far this thing can go.
Yeah.
I got pretty excited about it. It was fun. Also on this like agent thing, Cowork was released this week, right? And so the Copilot Cowork, sorry, not Copilot, Claude Cowork. I said I would try it. I haven't tried it, but
Yeah,
I did
they
see
said Claude Code for everything else.
yeah, for everyone else. But I did see
Yeah.
the LangChain guys. I think they released it yesterday, which is like they called it OpenWork. So they just, like they did with OpenSUI, they just built a version of it that you can just get running. So I want to actually give that a try as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Too many happens every time, every week. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't need to know about that. Tom, this jetpack and beads and all this stuff. I was like, man, but I think that it actually is kind of in a way revolutionary, or it's going to be a big part of what we're continuing to do in the future. So I took the time, and
well, I appreciate that, mate. I appreciate that. We'll see. But yeah, maybe next week we can check in and I can see, all right, how many tokens per second have I managed to get? Like, what's the average tokens per second I can get to?
I haven't checked, how does this, are we just burning tokens like crazy here on Anthropic, or I haven't even looked?
Well, because this works with Claude Max, right? Like, and you can just set it up so that you can just spin up your own Claude Max or Codex or Gemini. It just uses your subscription. But once you get it moving, apparently you do hit your Claude Max limit pretty quickly. Or at least that's what Jeffrey Emanuel and these other guys say. They're like, I've hit my monthly Claude Max subscription within 15. That's sort of why I think this open source thing is going to be required, like some sort of low cost, high throughput inference provider offload where you can spawn up these things, but have them coordinate with sort of not as intelligent, but still pretty intelligent models. Like that 4.7 model, apparently, it looks amazing for what it is and for the price, right? Like, I don't know if you've used it much.
I have been using, since they released it. And I've probably been using my own desktop app and GLM 4.7 more than Claude or ChatGPT. But I will say, when I say that, I use Claude Code primarily, like 95% of the time for coding. When I'm talking about just like, hey, research this or like MCP tool stuff. But I use my own with GLM 4.7 since it came out more than Claude or GPT. So,
And that's all through Olama Cloud.
yep. $20 and yeah. Well, Tom, you were talking about the rate limits, and that's what I'm kind of getting to is what if you can have multiple different, like your codecs, Claude Code, Llama Cloud, and it had some retry logic so that, well, I need to wait a little bit on Claude. Let me try codecs. Like, do you see that being a thing?
What do you mean a retry?
Like if you hit your rate limit with Claude Code and Jetpack is churning through, having some logic in there to say, hey, we can't use Claude right now. Let's use codecs and like switch between or just sound crazy someday locally, right? Hey, I'm paused on Claude Code. I'll just use GLM 4.7 locally for a little bit,
Well, that's sort of what I'm hoping for if I can get this gateway, like some sort of gateway or fallback thing implemented, right? So you could do that. The only thing with these subscriptions is you don't like, or as far as I'm aware, you don't really have a sense of like where you're at, right? They don't tell you on the developer ones like where you're at. They just tell you you're cut off. So managing the amounts that you can get. Apparently, the only reason they have those is because they really handle the caching. Like they have, so your actual amount of tokens is very, very low relative to like your quote usage. What I think is like these are all just hacks around the fact that like what we're talking about is just a hack based on the fact that the pricing is inefficient, right? Really, and that's the whole thing around like this developer subscriptions is they sell them because like they manage the caching and then most people just never get to that limit, right? So if this really takes off, then all of that's going to change. That pricing model is going to change. The whole thing is going to be different.
And that was kind of the issue with the open code where they're saying, I believe so, at least, that if we have control of the harness, we're more efficient. We can control that better. It's all standardized. Like we're all using the same harness. But when others, and you're using their fixed fee per month, you might have a harness that uses way more tokens than what they do, right? So I think that was part of the argument.
What I reckon would be good is if it was, and there are versions of this, and this is obviously what Droid and those factory guys do, and like lots of companies would be able to do this. But if you had a grouped execution in some sort of cloud product, then you could actually kind of be the distributed token provider and actually like get the inference at scale and then enable everyone into a sort of a more wholesale rack rate. Kind of like it feels like we're all basically buying our own like significant amount of like broadband when actually we could probably just share it, provided that we're all kind of consistent. I guess maybe that's sort of why like Open Router and all these guys are there, right? That's the whole idea of that category. It'd be great if you could like standardize the hook in and say like, this is what I need. And these are the models that we're going to use. And everybody just like have a minimum commit or something like that, where you can actually like scale these things up and get away from these, like all of these guys, this, Steve Yegi and Jeffrey Emanuel and a bunch of other people are like, oh yeah, I've got like 20 Claude Code Max kind of subscriptions. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. I think, yeah, this Jetpack thing definitely needs work because this guy's stuck in a bit of a loop. I've got to figure it out. I've got some agents, but they're all idle. They're not picking up enough tasks. All right, so let's see. What can I do?
About tools. So are you using tools within your setup?
Hang on a second. What do you mean tools outside of like Claude Code?
Yeah, are you just relying on the built-in tools or?
Yeah, I haven't gone down that path.
Well, you don't really use MCP a ton.
No, I'm pretty basic. I'm a basic bitch compared to you.
Well, that's not what I was saying, but
let's see where it's at. All right. These guys are done. These tasks, that's done. Creating the Kanban, implementing. I don't know. It's kind of cool. The fact that this is just happening out of the box is sweet, but it's not happening fast enough. I want to know what's going on. Agents start sequentially with the wait agent starts. Agent 1 blocks agents 2 from 10 from starting until its task completes. Would you require orchestrators promise all for agent startup, right? So I've got to spend more time with this. This is what I was hoping I'd give it to you and you'd solve all these problems for me, mate.
Well,
where we're at.
Maybe.
These are the beats.
I just have to figure out where this is at.
But it's just sick. Like, I just fucking love it, man. You just create all this stuff. It's so cool. All right. So What about now?
Yeah, once you get a project to this point with like functioning UI, this is where I have to be really careful because I'll get like this little thing doesn't work and then make sure I don't get sidetracked. Prioritizing the actual
Function.
the actual.
Yeah, my problem is I always work the other way around. I love the shiny things, so I love the interface. So I'll spend time going like, I'd really love that error message to be like styled differently rather than getting rid of the error message. Yeah, this needs work. All right, let's check in next week and we'll see where we're at. Maybe we'll have converted it to a command and conquer red alert interface.
Yeah,
Little
well,
guys
mine
running
says
around.
it's at 100% converted to Cloudflare, but I doubt that. We'll let me verify some things, and then we'll see. But yeah, Tom, the other I was gonna say you need tools. Tools. Are you familiar with the tool search tool concept that Anthropic rolled out?
I saw that. You explain that?
Yeah. So a lot of people's issue with MCP is around what people call context bloat or context rot. And long story short, MCP tools can consume a lot of context and right out of the gate eat up all your tokens. So the tool search tool is Anthropic's answer to it's very similar to Claude Skills and some of the other parts of their Claude Code framework, where it's really just like a text file or a markdown file that provides a map and it tells you, hey, this skill is in this folder and it contains these files, or this tool is at this location. So with the tool search tool, they're saying you can basically create a mapping with like hundreds or thousands of MCP servers and tools. And Claude will use programmatic tool calling and write the functions to call that tool rather than having to pull it all in right out of the gate. So it's basically, instead of Claude downloading the full list of definitions by default, it will only download the definitions for what you actually need. So, Tom, for Jetpack, now you just need a marketplace mapping essentially, and then you have access to run whatever tool, like a massive pool of tools.
Because yeah, I didn't even get to that point, which was all right, enabling these agents and customizing them correctly, right? It was just the prompt and the coding harness. But what you're saying is like I can use this and basically say like enable them with any skill efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you gotten this working? Have you used this tool search thing?
Tool search tool. Yeah. So I actually made a video demo about this before the holidays. There's some things that were incorrect, so I didn't post it. But I also have a demo. So I actually did a good amount of work on this because I'm actually using this in my projects. So
did you want to show it off now or do you want to wait for next time?
Well, we're kind of, I think we're towards the end of time. I'll put the link in there at least so you can check out the GitHub. Maybe I'll fix this video because it was at the end. There were a few things that were not accurate.
Yeah, that'd be sick. Why don't we leave it there, and then next week you can do a demo of that, and I'll jump into this node banana thing. Maybe my agent swarm will be ready by then.
Yeah, I'll let you know if this project actually works. If this actually works, that would be insane. This is a one shot. I did like a big plan, and then I ran dangerously, skip permissions, loaded up jetpack.
Well, mate, my one's still going, and it's building me this CRM tool.
I'm gonna have to look how long this ran because I hit go. I haven't looked at it. This was 2 days ago.
I think there's a timeout issue.
I just stepped up today.
I can see timeouts happening, so maybe there's like a timeout kind of component problem and like a recovery thing that needs to be built. I don't know, but I don't know. You let me know what yours is like. Maybe you do a video of yours. I'll record a video of what actually comes out the back end of this and put it on the GitHub account.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't know. World's crazy, man. I can't even, like you said, very Inception-like. All these different concepts overlapping, and it's very exciting, but it gets confusing.
Yeah.
When Karpathy says he's behind,
well, yeah,
something.
I feel like I just need to take a break from everything AI for a bit after this kind of little month and a half. But
I'll be honest, coming back from Hong Kong, I didn't take my computer or any, like I was offline. And I'll be honest, man, like coming back, it took me a bit to get spun back up. Like what exactly was I working on or what issues? And it felt weird because I've been just coding so much. So there's a ramp up period, at least there was for me.
All right, sick, man. Well, that was fun. Let's leave it there. And then we'll check back in on how AGI is going next week.
Have you seen any lists? Maybe we should do it that benchmark what people's predictions were versus where we're actually at. I've seen some but seeing an actual kind of detailed, I think
Yeah.
that'd be really interesting.
What people said versus what actually happened. I think it's all been demonstrated to be like a capital raising exercise, right? Because surprisingly enough, everyone's now saying, oh, it's not AGI, it's ASI. So they've downgraded it from general to super, whatever that means. And then they're like, yeah, we said that, but like even Demesis Harbors is like, I've got it's like 5 to 20 years. He's like, I don't really know. Basically, it could happen. It could not happen. But I think it's not surprising that OpenAI and Anthropic both start pushing those narratives around the time when they need cash.
Yeah, I know. I just want to see it on paper. So I was curious if you've seen anybody on Twitter or anything like that on X.
They're all too busy playing World of Warcraft and whilst working. I love that so much. I love it so much. I want it to be Transport Tycoon. This is like showing how much of a nerd I am. And like you can build little towns and like create like transport networks and stuff. That was like my favorite game. And when I was a kid, and then I finally found a replica of that on iPad, and I just got addicted to playing it for a while. But I want that, but a agent coding environment, so it feels like I'm playing Transport Tycoon, but actually building software.
So you can buy skins for your agents.
Don't you think it would be fucking hilarious if like that became if the gaming interface became the coding interface? And
I'm out.
And then you just like start a project, and then it becomes a business, and you get the add-ons, and then they interface, and they have like connections back to the internet, but it all comes through to you and interfaces being just like a game. Like that would be the greatest. Yeah, I can tell you're really excited about that idea and you love it so much.
Well, we adapt. I say that, but we'll do whatever. But all right, Tom. Well, have a good weekend. Great talk, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, you too, mate. Bye.
All right, welcome to the build.
All right, here's a follow-up from the demo to get a sense of where this is actually at. So I asked it to build Jetpack to build the CRM. It's gotten to the end of the CRM project with this instance of Claude Code and the components. I also asked it to do some debugging and store those in a separate file. And I'll use that to hopefully debug some of the errors that we saw in the demo before and push them so everyone can try it, fork it, figure this out, and give us your feedback. I'll put this all on the build, on the Vault, and you can go there and check it out and go to the actual repo and try it for yourselves if you're interested. But yeah, despite the timeout bugs, Jetpack successfully orchestrated the building of this application. The main issues were around these 300-second timeouts and the fact that it was working inside and outside of the directory, which is the main problem. And then you can see over here in actual Jetpack UI, let's make that a bit bigger, see what the details are. This is the visualization of the beads, all of the beads, components, tasks, subtasks, and leaves, of which there are many. This one's failed for some reason. The dashboard, and that says this is pending, but that hasn't been updated. So that's where it's at. And the actual folder, let's go and have a look at the actual folder and see what's in there. Go and open up. Let's have a look in Cursor and see what we're dealing with. Breaking the workflow and actually opening up an IDE. So this is the project folder. Zoom that in. All right, so here's the main problem. I've got too many sub folders that should be packaged together, or they shouldn't be in the project folder, but should be active within there, or should be exposed in there. This is Jetpack. These are the agents, the cycles, the runs, the number of, okay. So it's logged all of those. Here was the full plan with the item components and all of the agent inbox. Oh, this is cool. That's for some reason not. All of these have been archived. Okay. And that's MCP agent mail from Jeffrey Emanuel. And here are the tasks. Great. Okay. Now let's see if we can actually run this bad boy. Let's see if it actually kicks over. It starts up. Let's see. All right. CRM is live. Let's see. The original brief in high level was build me a modern CRM for a startup. Let's see what this is doing. What's going on with you? Internal server error. Let's debug that with Chrome. And what's going on in this dashboard? React hooks issues. So there's no test agent that should have been doing this over the top. All right, so that's an additional feature that needs to be added, or some test validation loop within Jetpack. As it runs, let's go back, escape. Can I get this to a standard actual execution? Obviously not. The next question about Jetpack I have is like, do you have a testing code validation agent as part of the swarm that picks up and validates and passes that information back to each agent? Should we have each agent allowed to create its own localhost instance, or like dev server, to do their own debugging? Okay, it just didn't do. Let's pause this and see. Are those actions reflected in the Jetpack instance? Is this still active? Let's see what's going on here. This is probably going to cause an error. Okay, all right, more work to do.